Hey guys, this is Cosmic. Just wanted to bring a guide for farming solo Necro in season 36. This is the Soul Shard season, so we have some pretty OP stuff here. There's a lot of different variants for this build, so I'm just going to go over what I slapped together, and then I'll have planners in the description for like the optimal setup. So overall here, if you want to just get started on this, most likely you're not going to have a Crisbins to wear to start off, so I usually recommend cubing that because it's the biggest multiplier here um, as far as the rings go. I have Zodiac here, but you can use SOJ, you can use Rachel's Ring of Larceny here. The Briggs Wrath is a huge part of this, so that's the jewelry. So Crisbins and Briggs are non-negotiable. If you don't have Briggs, this build's gonna suck, so definitely get that before you start really rocking this build. The gloves, if you're going to run the SOJ variant, you can wear Frostburn gauntlets. Frostburn gauntlets with SOJ is really good, and in general, it'll freeze stuff with the Harvest of Anguish, but it also works if you have cold damage like I do here. So wearing Frostburn will give you freezes, which means you don't have to run Zays for stun. So I'm running Zays to stun mobs. If we have a Frostburn gauntlets, let me see if I actually have one. Looks like we don't. Okay. So if you had a Frostburn gauntlets, you can wear those. That's going to be in the planner. Saint Archeries isn't really helpful in this build. I'm going to give a quick gameplay example just to kind of give a preview of what this looks like. So most people think of Nova as like this, like pushing build, but you see you just come in here, you blow everything up, you run really fast, just running around. It's a keep, so it's not really a good example. But I see you just kind of one-shot everything. And most people think of Nova as like this really slow build because you have to stop to DPS, but as you can see, we're not really having to like stop and chill. You just kind of tap Nova, blow everything up. The build in general usually has similar power, but the Soul Shards kind of take it to a point where you can get away with having really crappy gear and just kind of slapping this together. You just want to make sure that your LOD gem, Legacy of Dreams gem, is leveled up. Excuse me. So yeah, we're just blasting through T16 Nephalem Rift here. Just kind of one-shotting everything as we go through. And then for the boss, it usually helps to have that set the cycle damage here. This helps with single target. So it gives you that 400% multiplier to make sure you're one-shotting the boss. So that was a gameplay example of T16. That's one of the situations where you would use this build. Is T16 Nephalem Rifts. The other one will be in Visions. Before I go through a vision, let me finish reviewing the build. So for movement, we want Stewart's Greaves. We're going to wear them in this case, whereas if you have the Trigul set, you could cube these or wear them. The Witching Hour is a good option here, but you can also go with the Crumbs buff belt. You could also wear Gold Wrap and cube the Crumbs buff belt. So to show what that does, let's find the Crumbs buff belt. I know it's in here hiding somewhere. Okay. So the Crumbs buff belt gives 25% run speed. So that works as long as you haven't taken damage, which gives use to the St. Archeries gauge. So if you have this extra shield here, that will help make sure that this buff is up. We're not really super hungry for movement speed because we have a lot coming from the Soul Shards. So Soul Shards movement speed. I have the Death Blow here, but the build already has really good AoE. The Death Blow is actually more helpful for Visions. For T16, you can just run really anything you want here. You can run the Freeze power, which I'll talk about in a little bit. You can run the extra globes with the Stain of Sin. So that would be... we can find that one. yeah, the additional gain an additional Rift Progress Orb when you kill an elite pack. So you could run that one. I personally prefer the Anguish because it gives the extra movement speed. And for T16 and Visions, it doesn't really matter. Uh, if you run the poison debuff one, just make sure you have poison damage on your weapon. The death blow works, the extra movement speed and cooldown works as well. So whatever you get. But I would use the death blow if you're going to run Visions. So Reaper's Wraps is really helpful here for just making sure that you always have resource. This just helps make sure you never run out because you're manually casting Nova. As you can see, that costs resource. It doesn't cost too much, but eventually you can run out of resource. You do have Devour, which is going to restore resource when you kill enemies, but this just kind of makes sure that you never run into that. If you don't find that you need this, you can also run the Warzeshian Arm Guards for extra movement speed. Same reason here, the Devour, having an extra reserve of essence built up after you've run out helps with visions. So if you're on a vision and you go through some floors, you devour, and then you are granted this excess essence, you can then have a little bit of a reserve that will help with like killing the bosses on a floor. That, like, if you had 2 boss floors in a row, this helps deal with that, as well as this. And the combo that makes this all work is Devour with Life from Death. So that allows us to generate globes, which we get resource back from Reaper's Wraps. This combo all just kind of helps you play in Visions. The Simulacrum rune, the best one here is Blood and Bone, but there's other ones you could use. You can increase your essence to double. That would also be another solution you could use for resource issues if you'd rather just be tanky and not have to run Gold Wrap, so that you could run Witching Hour for the attack speed and then run Krelms. So there's a lot of different ways to run this. Haunted Visions is basically a must-have here. This just makes sure that you have the Sims forever. The Sims technically aren't required here to do enough damage, but I recommend it anyway. It helps make sure that you're losing life for your Iron Rows, because you're cumulatively losing life all the time. And when you keep losing life, you keep building up this Iron Rose. So see, the Iron Rose is not really like diminishing down to 0 just from standing here. Of course, blood rushing around is going to give us these Iron Rose stacks. But you see that they aren't like ticking all the way down to 0. That's because of the Haunted Visions. So moving on, we have Rezeth's Volition. This makes sure that when the essence is low, which it usually is below the maximum of 220, this gives us double toughness during that window, which is really the only useful shoulder you could put there. The Andariel's is the best helm because it gives, typically we would want attack speed here, but the elemental skills damage and the attack speed are a really nice combo. Stacking attack speed on our gear is really helpful in this build because we want to attack quickly so that the stopping to cast Death Nova occurs more rapidly. So let's go ahead and run into a vision. So gonna open a cow stick just so that I can get a level going here quickly. So see, we just kind of run around, suck everything in, blow it up with 1 Nova. Pretty nice little quick build for zipping around. The Tragul variant is much slower, so I definitely recommend running the LOD version. Getting really unlucky. We've killed 360 mobs here. So here's a vision. And we just run in, one-shot everything. Very nice, very nice. And we're just kind of plowing through visions. Another build you can run Visions with, and is more popularly known, is the Pestilence Necro, and that also does a really good job. Just harder to fit in quite the same amount of mobility as this one, so I do prefer this one. If you prefer the laziness factor, Pestilence, as far as Necro goes, or the LOD Rat Necro are going to be better because they have like this auto cast kind of thing going on. But my solution is, instead of having Nova on left to right click, I have Nova on a number. So I just press 1 for Blood Rush, and then I tap 2 whenever I want to kill stuff. So that does make it a little bit more of a lazy, farming friendly type build. So I believe I went over all of the items. Blackthorns is the only useful pants. The Iron Rose is crucial. The Scythe to Cycle, as you get stronger and you're more optimized and you're augmented, you can actually, if you're running T16 Nephalem Rifts, you can actually replace this with Echoing Fury for even more attack speed and even more movement speed, so that can be kind of crazy as well. The Zodiac, of course, this is just a placeholder. I recommend the SOJ, as I'll show in the planner. And then one thing I didn't mention here is the crucial Blood Tide Blade multiplier, which is what gives Death Nova all its damage. So that's that on that build, and I believe I went over, yeah, the Unstable Compound has a big AoE. I've gone over that in a previous guide. The Aura of Frailty is what allows enemies to get automatically sucked to you by Brig's Wrath. The Cannibalize rune isn't necessarily required. You could go with Voracious to reduce the essence cost of Nova, and then that could allow you to take like Warzeshian Arm Guards and other choices. So there's a lot of different ways to manage resource. I'm pretty sure I covered all of them. The Metabolism is the extra charge, and we want to cost double the health because we want to lose health quickly. That makes sure that the Iron Rose buff goes up to 10 as quickly as possible. So moving on, the Harvest of Anguish is movement speed. The Field by Death passive, this gets procced by Devour. And then this gives us Health Globes, which gives you like Absorb Shields and then Resource from Reaper's Wraps. Standalone is free toughness, but with Gold Wrap you technically don't need this because you already have Infinite. There's just really not much to do here. You can go Dark Reaping as another way of generating essence. You can go Spreading Malediction if you're just starting out the build and you're lacking damage. Every time you're surrounded by a bunch of mobs, you'll get like a little bit of a boost in damage. So that pretty much covers that build. Now let's move on into the solo XP stuff. This is the more exciting stuff. So once you've gotten a decent amount of gear, let's just go ahead and get all that stuff out of the way. Once we've gotten a decent amount of gear, we're going to try to put this together. This is the Rathma XP build. So most people don't think of Rathma as an XP build. This season, it gets something really huge that allows you to run for XP. Alright, so to go over this build, we're going to start with the most powerful aspect of the build that makes it work. And first off, I just want to say, before you build this, you need to make sure to roll a Ancient Jessuth Skull Scythe with cold damage. The other stats on it don't really matter if you just want to get the build rolling. So we want cold damage. Why? We're going to focus on getting this power here. You could have physical skills damage here at the top of the Soul Shard. You could have physical skills damage. You could have plus 15% weapon damage. You could have increased attack speed. Just whatever gets you rolling with that. Hitting enemies with cold damage has a 50% chance to freeze them. This is going to do two things for us. First off, it's going to make the build work. If you don't have this power, I don't recommend running Rathma for XP. It's terrible. So normally Rathma is really not great for XP. It's because it has way too many skills on the bar that are required. Because of that, in order to have Curse and Blood Rush and everything like that, we don't have any way to fit in a way to proc Chrisbins reliably. normally the biggest way we have of proccing it is Zay's Stone of Vengeance. That's a 20% chance to stun. Not very good, right? So that's per enemy hit. 20% chance to stun, not too great. This is going to be 50% chance to freeze, right? So this is going to, not only is that going to proc the guaranteed crit chance, but it's also going to proc the quadruple damage on Crispin's sentence. So this makes the build really work quite well, right? It's also better than Anguish because Anguish makes you take more damage, and we don't want that on Rathma because you will be on the floor if you do that, because you take 50% more damage on a build that's already squishy. You're not going to have a really good time there. Not to mention, you won't be able to proc Crispin's reliably. So this is the absolute staple in this build. Overall, we want to run as much cooldown as possible first. Make sure to have area damage in Paragon, and then we start to stack area damage on gear. So cooldown comes first, stack area second. Keep in mind that you don't really need to stack much crit chance on this build because you're going to be freezing enemies and you're going to have a 100% crit chance against them. Granted, if you're going a little bit higher tier to try to milk as much XP as you can out of these speedruns, that's where crit chance on gear is actually going to be handy, so I do still recommend running it. And then of course in the pushing build, you're going to want crit chance on your gear for the boss fight and for fights that take longer. If you're coming to a pack, you DPS them and you kill everything instantly, you don't need crit chance for that because you're just going to proc the freeze, you're going to kill everything, and then it's over. Crit chance didn't matter there, right? But then as you go higher, you're going to want that crit chance on your gear. So that's why I don't have crit chance here, because I didn't really need it, right? I'd rather have that physical skills damage. So the supporting items, the normal Rathma build, you have the 6-piece set, you have the Crimson set, which is huge. This season you get the free RCR in the helm, so that gives you even more toughness than normal. So it makes you a little bit tankier. I have RCR rolled on the shield as well, which I recommend for you guys. Most of you guys anyway. The big Giga Chad guys can run like increased elite damage or whatever. Not that this build really needs that. You already do a lot of damage to elites. So overall, the way this build works is does really strong single target with the Funerary pick, the Command Skeletons effect of the Bonds of Selena, and then the Justice Skull Scythe, synergizing with the Siphon Blood, and then recasting Army of the Dead, right? So the way that works is you do really good single target. So for that reason, we want to run the blue shard because we only take we deal 15% less damage to single target, which doesn't matter at all. We're not going to feel that, but we do double damage when we're surrounded. So this is going to help us get through the big density in the rift, right? So this is the best shard here. The other shards are typically just not good enough versus this one. You could run the movement speed power on the blue shard, but I don't think it really works too well. You're passing through a lot of mobs, so they're just going to slow you down rather than speed you up. So we're elite hunting with this build. We're passing through mobs. Not going to be like killing as you move. You're going to stop to kill elites. So the movement speed shard doesn't really do much here. Moving on to these skills. Power Shift is required as a rune for Siphon Blood because this procs the Funerary pick. I prefer the Frenzy rune on Command Skeletons because this procs the reset effect of the 2-piece set here very quickly, so that reset Army of the Dead when your permanent minions damage an enemy. Frenzy helps with that. Normally when I push, I like to run Dark Mending because I'm not really good at playing super aggressively if I don't have that rune. I prefer to play aggressively because it allows me to actually kill stuff. If I have to play and I'm like super scared to stop in DPS, then I can't really get much stuff done, right? So Frenzy in a speed run is absolutely crucial. we want to cast Army of the Dead as much as possible. That being said, because I run the Frenzy rune, for healing I need something, right, to heal other than life per hit. So that's why I'm taking the Gizzard gem as the third gem. The two main required gems are Zays, because we want this to kill the boss at range, and then Bane of the Trapped is just a staple in every build that does damage, right? Back to the skills. We've got Potency for armor. You can definitely go with Metabolism for mobility. Death Valley is a must here because this pulls enemies together, which helps you kill elite packs more efficiently. So if you have like a yellow pack, this pulls all the minions together so that the minions die, so you get the extra globes, right? So this is really helpful with that. This also makes sure that you kill more trash than you normally would without this rune. Or Frailty is just really a good thing to have in any necro build in solo. This also procs the Spreading Malediction, so it gives us a little bit more damage, and then enemies die earlier. If you know that an elite enemy that you've attacked at range is in a Frailty range, and they don't die from your Army of the Dead, like you know they're in this range, just move closer to them and then they'll die. Personal Army gives you damage reduction, so it's the only rune that's useful in Revive. The other use for Revive, you don't have to do this. I'm still getting used to it, but technically it's the only way we can squeeze out some extra mobility on this build, and that's this build's weakness, is it can't really fit much mobility. Fueled by Death, this gets procced by consuming corpses with Revive, so just when you kill a bunch of trash, try to press Revive, and then you'll get this effect. You could also replace this with the Cheat Death, or just not run with Eternal Torment, but I like to run with Eternal Torment because it has really good synergy with Spreading Malediction. So when you're passing through a bunch of trash mobs and hunting for elites, you're going to inflict Aura Frailty on them. It's going to last forever, and then you're going to get a damage buff that you'll then have when you fight the elite. So this is really handy here. I highly recommend using this combo. These three, they work really well together. Fueled by Death, again, that's being procced by Revive. You're going to have to get used to that. If you don't really get used to it, just run the Cheat Death Final Service. Or if you want extra healing, you can go with this form of healing and then go with an offensive gem here, like Gogok of Swiftness, Bane of the Powerful, or even if you're going for like slightly higher tiers, you could go Bane of the Stricken here. Blood as Power is highly recommended because you're taking damage a lot on this build, and then you're healing quickly. So this allows you to reset Army of the Dead so that you can cast it more frequently. Again, like I said before, in a speed run, we want to be able to cast Army of the Dead as much as possible, because this, every time you cast this, is the only time you kill stuff. So we want to kind of overkill that, right? So that means going with as much cooldown as possible in the build, cooldown everywhere if we can. And lastly, the Fate's Vow is a huge damage multiplier on this build. I didn't mention that before, so make sure to have that in the cube. Unfortunately, it's really hard to fit like Stuart's Greaves or something like that into this build. I tried it without Crimsons and with Stuart Greaves, and it runs like 3 tiers lower, but a lot faster. So if you guys want to run that with like Witching Hour and then Stuart's Greaves here, you can. The other option would be to wear the Fate's Vow and then cube the Stuart's Greaves for the full 100%, and then you would just wear the Rathma boots. So I don't recommend that setup, just because I felt like it just wasn't enough XP to justify doing it. But let's go ahead and move into some gameplay example here. And nice, we have the Orc stream. So good chance of getting procced like right off the bat. We're looking for like a big chunk of mobs to hit right off the bat. Kind of want to hit like as much as you can. I didn't really hit much there, right? So gonna go again, and now we have our 10 revives. So now we're blasting, and we're gonna pretty much just go after elites. power pylon. Pretty good. And then I'm going to make sure to cast the revive for that little mobility while in transit, right? So see how that gives me that little mobility buff. Nice. Speaking of mobility, our favorite pylon to see is the channeling pylon because it gives us mobility. I'm going to show you here in a second. So see how now I have mobility, right? And then I can just stop DPS real fast. And we're just going to blast through this really fast. Again, we're hunting for elites and pylons. Okay. So as long as you have a channeling pylon active, you're able to kind of blast through and play like this. And normally you won't have that on every run, so keep in mind that's going to give you more of a reason to cast your revives in between kills so that you can get that buff. Just going to go to next floor here. Seeing if we have pylon. Looks like we don't. We're going to wait for the skeletons to reset army, and then there we go. So it's about a 2-minute run. And I could have stayed in that last map there and then gotten under 2 minutes there. So typically you're going to be looking at somewhere between 90 seconds and 2.5 minutes on these runs. And you'll run somewhere between, like, if you're lower Paragon with shittier gear than me, like 125s, and then you can go up to like 140s with this if you're like super optimized high Paragon. And you'll still, same pace, you know. So those would be the tier range, like 125 to 140 at that pace. So I hope this helps with you know, solo farming XP. If this is something that you guys want to do, I have been asked about this season more than other things. How do you farm on Necro? Well, hopefully this answered the question for you guys. I understand that this isn't for everybody, but for those of you that are interested in trying this out, I hope you enjoy it and have fun this season. Take care.